Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in, wherever you are in the world. My name is Casey Willis, and I am the podcast manager for Goody Nation. And you're tuning into Why Relationships Matter in the Innovation Economy. So, if you are unfamiliar with Goody Nation and what we do as an organization, we exist to help bridge the relationship gap for so many promising founders. These are founders in underserved communities. These are founders in the social impact space, folks who don't often always have the connections that they need to get to the next level in their enterprises. And so a lot of the times when we're thinking about the innovation space and startups, it's a lot of the times we're thinking about funding, who's raising what funding, who's getting what deal. But on this show, while that's very important, we love that, we like to focus on having conversations with folks in the innovation space about relationship building, because that is one of, if not anything else, like one of the most important things that new founders, existing founders need to do in order to be successful. And we love hearing from different perspectives from folks all over the world. And so today we have a very special guest. We have Nakia Melicio in the house, and he is going to tell us his sort of academic perspective when it comes to relationship building in the innovation economy. So thank you so much for being with us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to our conversation.
Of course, of course. And so our classic Goody Nation question that we love to ask everyone,
Okay.
what is your origin story? Meaning, what is sort of like the pivotal moment or moments that kind of set you off on your career path?
Yeah. So, the running joke, I always say, people ask me, how did I become an entrepreneur, or how did I even begin the process of thinking about becoming an entrepreneur? And it goes way back. I don't know if you all remember back in school, all the kids wanted candy and they always wanted to, and you was that kid, I was that kid that always had candy. And so I started to figure out, I was like, wait a minute, I'm giving my candy away for free. But I was always that kid that was always trying to figure out, Mom, can I get the next game? Can I get the next pair of sneakers? And it's one day she said to me, she said, you can have whatever you want just as long as you work hard for it. And it's your responsibility to make sure that you manage your money. And if you manage your money properly and you can afford to buy the things you want, you'll be in good shape. So what I figured that I do, I went to the local bodega, the local grocery store, and I purchased a whole bunch of candy. And I had basically two backpacks. I had one that had all these different types of candy in it. And so when kids asked for candy, depending on the type of candy, whether it was Now Laters, whether it was Snickers bars or whatever, I would actually sell candy bars to kids. But what I actually realized is that I understood business at a very, very young age. And I knew that if I wanted to get the things I wanted in life, one, obviously I had to work hard. But I love the fact of owning my own destiny, owning my own direction. And so hence the term, almost 20, 30 years later, and several startups and several businesses that I've had, I still have that true entrepreneurship passion. But I think the thing that I love the most about it also was I was a servant and a giver at heart too. So there were some times where I gave away some candy or discounted it to make sure. But that's kind of my fast, short story in terms of how I fell in love with this world of entrepreneurship.
And so that's another reason why we do this podcast, right? We have heard so many different versions of when I was younger,
Right.
I started selling candy. I started
Right.
selling pop or chips, like those
Right.
important pivotal moments we don't even think about, like,
Right.
oh, I might be an entrepreneur someday. And
Right.
so you mentioned that you started several companies. I'm curious, on your path to, where you are today, were there any influential people, whether it was like family members or teachers or mentors, who kind of saw like, oh, he seems to know a little something about business. Maybe we should sort of guide him in this path.
Right. Yeah. I would say most of what I've learned about my work ethic, entrepreneurship, was honestly watching my mother. She was a nurse, she was a single parent. And I don't think that there is any woman that have worked as hard as she did. And her passion to her craft, even though it wasn't her company, she worked in such a way as if she was the CEO and the owner of the company. And I think there's something to be said about that mentality because that was kind of my example where I don't do anything unless I'm 100% committed to it. And no matter what organization I'm committed to, I work it as if it's my own company and treat it with the same level of integrity and the same level of respect. Now, most of the people that I've had the opportunity to be mentors, I've had to glean from a distance. Some people that I didn't have access to, hence why this conversation is about relationships, right? And so I did not have the opportunity to have access to certain people like the John Maxwells, the Richard Diamonds, the people that I've saw in the business world growing up that were very influential to me. And just reading the stories, I was an avid reader. Even to this day, the challenge though is that sometimes I read 4 or 5 books at a time and only actually finish maybe 1 or 2 a year. But I was just such a learner and such a sponge, and I had to find the opportunity to learn the things I needed to learn from some of the people that I viewed would be good mentors from a distance. But most of the work ethic, the things that I know about entrepreneurship and innovation today, really came from the principles of my mother and just watching her work ethic. When she wanted to learn something, she didn't take no for an answer, whether it was to go read a book or to go learn it or to go learn a new skill to kind of push her career in a completely different direction.
Yeah, shout out to moms. Moms, yes. We love moms on this show as well. And so something that you mentioned was very interesting about almost having mentors at a distance or
Right,
having to read in order to learn something that you wanted to learn.
right,
In this day and age, there are so many YouTube tutorials and online this, and you can listen to a podcast to find information.
right,
Um, and so what is kind of your approach in like this world where people can kind of just find whatever they want online to
right.
still stay connected and meet new people and maybe go learn something new in front of another human being at an actual event? Where do you find the time to fit that into your busy schedule?
Yeah, so I take the approach that I believe that every part of life, if you're in 2 phases of life, right? You're either being taught or you're teaching, right? And so what I found in the phases of life is that I need to always make sure that I'm in a position to be coachable, no matter, and never feel like I'm in a place that I know enough or I know more than the next person. So I figure that every person that I engage with, there's something to be learned, and there's plenty of people within our ecosystem that I get the opportunity to learn, whether it's via something that they post or some opportunity that they pursued and they were able to be triumph in it. And so for me, I think that life is one big classroom, and if you're willing and open to learn and to glean from those that are blazing trails, you can learn a lot of different things from individuals. And I always try to put myself in a position to be coachable. And I think to me, that is where the greatest lessons for me have come when I've had the opportunity to see some of the champions that I, admire here in our local ecosystem that are doing really great and amazing things, and just really just sit back and watch and see what are some of the lessons, but also glean from those that are transparent about the failures that they have and what they did to kind of overcome them. And so those humility leaders are the ones that I learn the most from. The leaders that feel like that they are never willing to share their vulnerabilities or their weaknesses. Not that I don't learn anything from them, but I think that to me, I can learn from just as much from your failures as I can from your successes.
Can you tell us more about your role as senior research faculty at Georgia Tech?
Yeah, so my role here at Tech, in addition to I run a couple of centers here. One is the Center for MedTech Excellence, which is focused on helping all things biotech, life science, medical device to help them kind of grow, scale everything from lab to market. Then I have another program that I run here called Scale Up Lab, which is focused on any scientist, engineer, researcher that is building or innovating in the deep tech space. And my role and responsibility is to help those entrepreneurs from a scientific standpoint, help to create and innovate and build their projects. And then what we do here at the Enterprise Innovation Institute is we do a lot of research around economic development, how to improve innovation ecosystems. And so we do a lot of work locally and we do some work globally. And so I get the opportunity to spend time working with amazing other faculty members here in terms of writing grants, providing support, looking for new funding support to fund new projects. And so we spend a lot of time grant writing, also do spend some time teaching with our startup lab class that we have here that helps to work with students to help them create and start innovation. Then there's another program that I work here called Venture Lab, which is out of the Office of Commercialization. And what we do at Venture Lab, our primary responsibility is to provide support to our faculty members that are thinking about translation of their research and how to get it from lab to market. And one of our responsibilities is to provide coaching, to provide support, but also to help them and kind of hold their hand through the process and help them to, I guess, live their dreams or possibly leave their day job as a faculty and try to move their research into commercial markets. So I spend a lot of my time here on campus, teaching, supporting, writing grants, and helping to build new things.
So talk to us a little bit about sort of the relationship between theory and practice in entrepreneurship, because, for those of us who have been a part of incubators or accelerators, there's this whole other support system when you have people who are like dedicated to helping your venture grow, and they're doing workshops and deep dives and lunch and learns, and you're like, getting the information. They're setting up the network events, they're setting up the mentorship events, and then you go out into the real world and it's like, oh dear, oh wow, no, someone set up something for me.
Right.
Someone who is sort of, you're on both sides of it. You've done it and you're also teaching it. What is, I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on the relationship between theory and practice in the innovation economy?
Yeah, so I think that when you balance between the two, right, is of course, when you're in the world of got all the workshops and everything at your hands and you're trying to build and you're trying to innovate, it's a comfortable, safe space, right? But when you get into the world and then now you have to bring that technology actually to life, and you hear a lot of no's and a lot of doors shut in your face, or that won't work, and you hear the reality of how people view your technology. I think this is a point, again, where we circle back around, where good coaching and good relationships, where all that stuff comes into play. And then you have the opportunity that when you're in the real world and you're actually pursuing the thing that you have actually been working on for months, and it becomes a very pivotal moment for you. And I think that sometimes that's very difficult for founders. And one of the things that I see for founders and faculty and students, that certainty, that unknown for them is the thing that they have a hard time with. And this is why it's so important to have dedicated coaches such as myself and others that are in our ecosystem that are amazing at what they do, that spend endless hours, hours trying to provide support. And sometimes that support comes in the form of just listening to what they're thinking about and helping them brainstorm through it, right? Like, I know this is what you've been working on in the lab. I know this is what you've been working on in terms of the incubator and your accelerator. And I know that you're in this safe space, in this bubble. But how do we begin the process of not only translating the research or the technology or the innovation to a commercial market, but how do we prepare you as well too? How do we help you to navigate from, just being the founder, just working on the thing, to being the actual owner, the CEO, the executive that's going to build and create the next innovation that will come from you, right? And so sometimes it's a combination of how do we build the person as well to help soften the blow of those realities that you're describing.
So now that you're in a position of leadership and coaching, and you're working with faculty and students, and you're, sort of someone who is helping to guide future innovators, future entrepreneurs, how do you stay excited about helping other people? Like, of course, when it's like your own thing, it's like, oh, this is my baby, I'm going to work 27 million hours. How do you sort of keep that excitement and keep those relationships with the folks that you're helping fresh?
Right. Hey, listen, first I say I am so like geeked and passionate about what I do. And sometimes I'm like, they actually pay me to do this stuff. And I'm like, shh, don't tell anybody that I get paid to do this, right? For me to see that hope in their eyes and to see that desire to build and to create something, it gives me a sense of pride to co-create with them. And I want everyone that I work with to feel like I'm in this with you. You're not by yourself. And in that, I'm going to give you everything I have. If you give it back to me, I'm going to give you everything I have. And then those moments that where you only have 80, then hey, I may have to kick it up and to help support that other 20 that you have. But I believe without the shadow of a doubt that I am called to do what I do. And I believe that every single gift and talent that I've been giving, it is my personal responsibility to make sure that I expose everything that I have to whoever I work with, support, and coach, and help them in that regard. And I know that sometimes, because I know what it's like to be in a position to need and to want, and to not have a shoulder to cry on or someone to turn to, or even someone to ask for advice. Sometimes I've had to figure it out myself. And so for me, keeping that passion is just listening to the joy and the excitement in them. To me, no ideal is dumb. To me, is you're trying to figure out how do you do this, and then I'm here to come alongside to maybe put some context to how do we begin the process of thinking about this idea, right? How do we begin the process of really getting to a place of actually launching it? So I take everything that I do very personal. And for me, I'm not a 50% person or a 70 or an 80. If I'm not all in 100%, I don't do it. And so I find and take very good, very sense of pride, have very deep sense of pride when it comes to working with founders and entrepreneurs and working with faculty, because I want them to feel like this is a safe space, right? And so in that requires a level of commitment. Do I get tired? Absolutely. Do I want to quit sometimes? Absolutely. But I think when I realize that it's not about me and that my true passion is to serve you, things become a little easier in the conversations.
That's really cool. I think that's
Mhm.
something that sort of is drawing me as sort of an outsider
Mhm.
to the innovation space. As someone who works in the
Mhm.
arts, there's so much parallel. I mean, you use the term co-creation,
Right,
right? Like it's not just, you're the director and you're just like do what I tell you to do and that's how you'll
right,
succeed. It's having to collaborate with folks who have a vision. It's having to have that passion with them to be as excited about it as they are.
right.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's super cool.
Yeah, no, it truly is. And I will say that, there is, some amazing leaders here at Georgia Tech that create the space for us to be creative and support that. And I think that that's a very rarity in some jobs, right? And I think that to me, I think that enables the passion to want to continue to give more. When you work with a whole unit of individuals that are passionate about giving everything they have to make sure that people succeed.
Well, speaking of Georgia Tech and speaking of Georgia
Mhm.
and the state of Georgia, city of Atlanta.
Right,
Atlanta has been getting so much buzz lately about wanting to become a top 5 tech hub in the United States.
right.
There's been so much, new buzz about the new
Mhm.
developments downtown and bringing in, new talent and incubating new startups and wanting to, produce the next unicorns. And so for my final question for you, again, as someone who has both the theory and the practical lens,
Right.
what are your thoughts about, I don't know if you have any like hopes and dreams for the future of the Atlanta innovation space. Is there anything in your experience that makes Atlanta sort of like different than anyone else? Is it like the people, the organizations? Just your thoughts about the Atlanta innovation economy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for one, it's people like you, right, that have a passion for our ecosystem. And while you have a passion for ecosystem, you have passion for your own individual dreams. Me personally, I see our ecosystem as taking the opportunity to rewrite globally what ecosystems should look like and how you should build them. We get relationships right, we get inclusivity right, and we've got mayors, governments, we've got folks that are working hard to make sure that everything clicks on the same cylinders. And to have that, it's a very rarity in most ecosystems to see a lot of that. And so we're very intentional about the relationships that we're building here. I think that while we're striving to be a top 5, I honestly think that yeah, we'll be a top 5 and perhaps a number 1. But I think in that pursuit, I think we're going to be bigger than that. I think we're going to help connect the dots for this is how you build inclusive innovation ecosystems that pull everybody into the equation and not isolate people out of the equation. Because you see very strongly how do we merge a lot of things, right? Because we're at this intersection of entrepreneurship and research more than ever before. We're seeing how academic institutions and local economies are working together to try to build innovation ecosystems. You see local innovation ecosystems working with school systems to figure out how do we equip the kids with the resources they need to be successful in our ecosystem. So I personally believe that Atlanta is bigger and beyond than what folks are even thinking or imagining from my perspective. I see all the great things, all the people that are doing in our ecosystem, and I see that the world is really watching. And we say the thing that Atlanta influences everything. It truly does influences everything. When you're in Seoul, Korea, and I was in Seoul, Korea, and you see somebody wearing an ATL Braves hat and they got it on backwards, I'm like, that's influence. So the world is listening. And I think that as the world is listening, they're watching. But as they're also watching, they're copying in that regard as well too, and trying to figure out how do we connect the dots to make our ecosystem great. When you think about everything from affordable, trying to figure out housing and how to use innovation to do that. When you think about how to connect the dots with STEM and education, seismic at Georgia Tech, there's so many different things that are happening in our ecosystem and so many great champions. And I'm just proud to be just behind the scenes or one of those individuals in our ecosystem, standing up and always cheering on and supporting, and always bragging about the things that are happening and the people in our ecosystem as we all collectively work together to make sure that not only this is the best place to work, but the best place to innovate, the best place to get the best job, and to make sure and also have a little bit of fun while you're doing it here in Atlanta.
Well, we're certainly fortunate to have someone like you who is a part of helping to build and reinvent this, whatever the Atlanta innovation economy is going to be.
Right.
And so my question for you, if someone wanted to reach out to you and say, hey, how do I learn more about the research you're doing? How do I learn more about the programs at Georgia Tech?
Right.
What would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I am very, very active on LinkedIn. Find me on Twitter or X, I should say. Find me on X. I am certainly on there. If you want to know more about the two programs that I run here at Georgia Tech, you can go to medtech.godtech.edu, or you can go to scaleuplab.godtech.edu, or send me a personal LinkedIn request or a message on LinkedIn, and be more than happy to support you, and to get you plugged in or do whatever I can to help you or connect you to the right resources.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that vision with us today. The vision that I think all of us here in the city share of wanting Atlanta to be not only a top place to do business and a top place to start companies, but a top place for people to have sustainable lives and healthy lifestyles and to be able to go and enjoy themselves. And so while Goody Nation is a part of helping to make that vision a reality, of course, it's folks like Nakia, it's folks like y'all listening today who are also as important. And so while we're trying to build these intentional relationships to strengthen the ecosystem as a whole, remember, it can start small. It can start with shooting someone a text or an email like, hey, I just saw this opportunity. You might be interested in this. Or, hey, I'm going to have coffee with this person. Do you want to come join me? Like, it doesn't have to be a monumental thing.
Right.
It just has to be intentional. And you could like accidentally be the spark that helps someone's venture take off into another dimension.
Right.
And so with that, this has been another amazing episode of Why Relationships Matter. And as our Goody Nation founder, Joey Womack, always says, stay magnetic and outwork yesterday. Bye.
Awesome. Bye.